2016 saw Bandai Namco. Well, we fucked that up. 2016 saw Bandai Namco release individual digital releases of their classic arcade games on Steam as part of their arcade game series. One of those games is today's subject matter, Pac-Man, the 1980 maze-running, dot-chomping, ghost-dodging arcade classic that got popular and spawned numerous games and sequels and such. One could wonder why anyone would buy this when there's a Pac-Man Museum compilation also available on Steam that includes Pac-Man in all its glory. On the flip side, however, one could also argue why anyone would want to buy a compilation of games they'll never touch just for the one game they're actually interested in. It's a sound piece of logic behind some of the choices in Hamster's Arcade Archive releases, and a discussion for another time. In any event, you know the drill with Pac-Man by this point. Eat all the dots to clear the maze and move on to the next, which is just the same, but everything's is faster. Avoid the ghosts until you gobble up a pellet to turn them blue, and then you can eat them for bonus points. Tried and true gameplay that holds up, and it's classic Pac-Man with the classic appearance, classic sound effects, the classic gameplay, and the simple yet responsive and ultimately functional controls. I say that with an asterisk at the end. But regardless, if you've played any version of the traditional classic arcade Pac-Man game, then you've pretty much played this. It's old hat, it's still good, and it's still fun. But Miss Pac-Man is better, but I digress. Now, Pac-Man is a classic, great game. Everything around that game, as far as this arcade game series release is concerned, is another story. You have two screen borders to choose from, and they both look obnoxious. I don't care if it's vintage arcade artwork, the borders are very unappealing in this format. You do have the option of replacing the borders with a plain gray backdrop, which is better than nothing, but I didn't do that because I wanted to share the misery with everybody, and so here we are. Aside from that, you have some options, some sound settings including the option to add reverb, which I'll admit I like adding a bit of reverb to my Pac-Man sounds. There's screen settings like sizing, positioning, zooming, scanline adjustment, and you could even flip the screen 90 degrees if you want to play on a vertical display if you have one of those lying around. Your usual game settings, lives, how many points for an extra live, enabling the kill screen at the theoretical end of the game, and choosing your starting round if you want to start on a later round that you've already cleared or whatever. Altering these options, of course, will keep you from online leaderboards, which is also a thing with this game if you care for that sort of thing. No control options other than to invert the up and down, which shouldn't be a surprise since Pac-Man only uses the stick, but Pac-Man does not use the D-pad on an Xbox controller. You're stuck with the analog stick, which isn't particularly ideal for this sort of game, so I ended up just using the keyboard, which is only slightly better. You have to be careful not to press two buttons at once, two directions at once I mean, otherwise Pac-Man won't move, which is not quite intuitive, and not something I've encountered with other Pac-Man ports, emulations, whatevers. So I found that to be a very odd control quirk, but other than that, that usually works fairly well. Despite that little snag, however, it's a perfectly functional emulation of the original Pac-Man arcade game, and if you just want a standalone release that's not part of any compilation, it's usually about $5, so it's not a huge money sink, and that's about it really. So if you want Pac-Man on Steam and you don't want to go for the compilation, that's another way to go for. So, yeah. Bye.